Okay, good afternoon, everybody. As we get started here, just got a little bit of mood music for you all, so feel free to just enjoy that for a few minutes while we get started. Everybody comes in here, so and we will get started close to the top of the hour. Okay.
It was on and fine. The months when my love was born in the past. The bills all came from Belgium together killed my electric. It is the months man. What is it? The guest included Luke and his son. The scene was rocky, all were digging the sounds. Eagle on chain, backed by his baying hound. The coffin bankers were about to arrive. With their vocals, quick kick of five. They played the monk man. It was on and on. With the monk man. The drummers wished he'd ring. Seemed he was troubled by just one thing. Open the lid. It's now the monster man. It's a graveyard smash. On and fire. It's now the monster man. Everything's too ratchet up. My monster man. It's a good man. You living smash with me. God is sin. Then you can monster man. And you my graveyard smash. You'll catch on and on fire. Then you can monster man.
All right, welcome everybody. We're going to give it a few more minutes as we have a few more people joining. Turn off our mood music for the time being so we can kind of get ourselves started. So hopefully everybody can see me and hear me okay. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody for the time being while I'm presenting, just for kind of courtesy purposes. If there are any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, chime in, ask a question if it's important. Otherwise, there will be some time at the end to ask questions and have a discussion. So, but welcome to our next series, our next session in the Back to School series that I've been doing. This one is on long-term care and end-of-life planning. And unfortunately, I have to say this is a little bit hits a little bit close to home because my wife and I are kind of dealing with some of these issues as we speak with our own family. So hopefully this information will be helpful to you. If not currently, maybe it'll be helpful as you plan for some of these circumstances in the future. Okay. So to get started, and this is going to be a rough overview. This is a very in-depth subject, so I hope to present some high-level information for you. But certainly, if there are specific questions for you personally, feel free to reach out to us separately, and we will kind of take your questions and situation on a case-by-case basis. Okay. All right. So welcome everybody. Let's get started. First and foremost, here's what we're going to be covering today. So we're going to talk about what is long-term care. There's a little bit of misunderstanding about what we're talking about when we're talking about long-term care in general. We're going to talk about the cost of care, paying for long-term care insurance options, some legal planning issues. If you weren't part of the webinar last month, I did a webinar on estate planning, and you're welcome to go back and look and watch that video from last month. It is posted on our website, or we can send you the link if you'd like to watch my previous video on estate planning. Okay. Then we're going to talk about some end-of-life planning topics and integrating long-term care and end-of-life planning into your financial plan, a little bit of resources, and then we'll close it up with questions and answers. Okay. All right. So with that, important disclosure. This presentation is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as legal or tax advice. Okay, I encourage you to consult a qualified estate planning attorney or a tax professional for advice regarding your specific circumstances and situation. But I do hope to provide you sort of an education about some of these concepts that you can use to talk to your attorney or tax professional about your particular situation. So my role is to help you coordinate your financial plan with your broader estate and legacy planning goals. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay. All right. So with that out of the way, let's talk about, all right, what is long-term care? Okay. So oftentimes people conflate long-term care with medical care. And while it does have an overlap, it's not exactly. So long-term care is a range of services and support that helps you to meet health or personal care needs over an extended period of time. The focus is on helping individuals maintain their quality of life when they can no longer perform what are considered quote unquote activities of daily living independently. So if you can't perform these activities independently without help, that's when we're talking about having long-term care assistance. And what are the activities of daily living? So generally they are bathing, eating, transferring, dressing, and transferring I mean by being able to get up and move from, say, your bed to the table or the bathroom or other ways. Also dressing, toileting, and continence. So toileting meaning being able to get to the toilet on your own, and continence would be being able to kind of maintain yourself without needing additional assistance or care. So generally speaking, when we're talking about the need for long-term care, or when, say, long-term care coverage kicks in, generally the definition is when somebody is unable to perform at least two or more of those ADLs in a given day. Okay. Now, there's a little bit of a judgment call. Sometimes there's difficulty with these issues, but people are kind of able to kind of muddle along on their own. But the specific definition of when long-term care is required is when, generally speaking, a physician specifies that an individual is not able to perform these particular ADLs on a consistent basis. Okay. Let me make sure that I've covered everything on this. So, all right. So now with that definition in mind, all right, what are the types of long-term care? Okay, first, and it is probably the most common and popular, would be in-home care. So that's help with those ADLs, where somebody comes in to assist you or your loved one in their home with these particular items. Okay, we're going to talk about costs of these various options in a few minutes, but I'm just going to go through them item by item first. Okay, next we have community-based care. Generally speaking, this is where you have community transportation or delivered meals. Oftentimes, we're talking about what is considered adult daycare, where an adult is taken to a facility or an environment where they are able to be supervised and assisted during the day so that their adult children are able to go to work and provide for the family. Next is assisted living. So this is for individuals who need some degree of assistance, but still can maintain and want their independence. Okay. And then nursing homes, so or what we also might call a skilled nursing facility. That's going to be for somebody that requires 24-hour medical supervision or a skilled nurse to provide food, medical treatments, or sustenance in order to sustain their life. And then lastly, we have memory care units, which is sort of a specialized category of either assisted living or nursing home. And this is for individuals, obviously, that have either Alzheimer's or some form of dementia in which it's not safe for them to live independently on their own. They need to be kept in a controlled environment for their own protection. Okay, so those are the different categories of types of long-term care assistance or living circumstances that we're talking about here. All right, who needs it? All right, approximately 70% of people over age 65 will need some form of long-term care during their lifetime. Most frequently, this comes in the form of an adult child helping a parent with some of those activities of daily living, oftentimes in their own home. But it also encompasses the other versions that we're talking about here. And I also want to mention that, while we're generally talking about long-term care for older adults, it doesn't necessarily, it's not explicitly for just older adults. Oftentimes the need can arise for long-term care due to an accident or an illness or something where somebody needs, somebody has a chronic condition and they need assistance, even for younger folks. So while we're generally talking about this applying to older adults, it can be for anybody at any age. All right, so let's talk about cost of care, because this is where everybody has sticker shock related to this particular aspect of financial planning. All right, so these are average annual costs, 2025 estimates. Long-term care can be one of the most significant costs that a family faces during their lifetime. So in the range of what it might cost to send a child to college or purchasing a house. Okay. And obviously they vary and they depend significantly on an individual's personal circumstances or situation. But let's just talk about some ranges here. So for somebody that needs home health aid, you're looking at, a cost, and this is for close to a full time, maybe 20 to 40 hours of time for a home health aide per year. So that's going to range in the, somewhere around $75,000. Paying an hourly rate of somewhere between 20 and maybe $40 per hour, depending upon what that individual that individual skills and qualification and what is specifically needed. Okay. Also, concurrently with that, so homemaker services. This would be a situation where somebody comes in to help somebody to get up and get their meals prepared and eaten, possibly providing assistance, taking medication, or other types of things with maintaining the house. Okay, doing the laundry, making the bed, vacuuming, cleaning, dusting, etc. Okay, assisted living facility. So it says approximately $60,000, $4,000 to $6,000 per month. This is a range, but generally speaking, you're talking about a facility that might be an apartment, a studio, a one bedroom, could be multiple bedrooms, but generally we're talking about an apartment in a combined community in which the person has access to those assistance services. Then they might have meals provided either independently or in a community environment. So those costs can range. Again, depending upon what is involved, right? If it's just the living facility, right, with meals provided, that might be on the lower end. If there's additional assistance that is required in terms of all those other ADLs, that may push the cost up. Okay. All right. So next to a nursing home, right? So there's a breakdown here between a semi-private room and a private room, right? A private room is always going to be more expensive than a semi-private room. A semi-private room is going to be one in which you are sharing a room with somebody else. And so in this case, the range is $8,000 to $10,000 per month. Varies again based upon location. More urban areas are going to cost more than say more rural areas. But actually, that may not necessarily be the case, because the further out in rural areas, the more it costs to get those people and services there to provide the assistance. So it just depends. I would encourage you to shop around for these particular services, but a private room is going to be a little bit more. It's going to run maybe $10,000 to $12,000 per month. And again, this is because you have skilled nursing, you have certified nurses and medical professionals providing that round-the-clock care to maintain life. And I would also put in this category memory care as well. So memory care is going to also be in this range, because it's going to have the requirement for those skilled medical professionals. So again, level of care determines the costs. The average long-term care stay. So if somebody is moved into, say, a skilled nursing facility for dementia or other significant conditions, the average stay, the average time in a facility is approximately 3 years for women and 2 years for men. Okay. This is not talking about hospice. This is talking about when somebody really needs much more assistance. So that's the average. Now, candidly, with averages, there's a range. So it could last anywhere from 1 year to 5 or more years. We know we all probably have an example of somebody that it has a very long life. They're very healthy, but maybe they have cognitive decline or dementia, and they're going to be around with us for a while. So inflation. This is also one of the big concerns for folks. Inflation in this area has been rising. So historically, it's been 3 to 5%. I think as of the last couple of years, we've been looking at it rising 5 to 7 or more over the next 10 years is what we're looking at. And so you can see that last bullet point, the second to the last, the 3-year stay in a private nursing home could potentially cost, 3 to 4 or 5, maybe $500,000, depending upon how long they end up staying in the facility. So a significant item to plan for as far as cost is concerned. Okay, so then let's talk about how do we fund this thing, right? This cost of care, right? Who's going to pay for it? Well, obviously, the first item there is self-funding, right? So using savings, investments, retirement accounts, or potentially even home equity as a source of the cash to cover the costs. This provides, control and flexibility, but the risk is having that person running out of money, depleting their assets that they may want to go to either a spouse or to their kids or use for legacy goals. So that's self-funding, but obviously in conjunction with that, you have family support. So this would be either an unpaid or possibly a paid caregiver, maybe a family member or a friend that is there to help to provide these services, right? So a family member or friend that comes over to make meals or helps to the person to bathe. So that helps to reduce the cost. Obviously, that provides an emotional and a financial strain on those caregivers if they're especially if they're a child. The most common caregiver in our society is the oldest adult daughter. Unfortunately, that's just what the statistics shows is that the oldest adult daughter ends up being the primary caregiver, not exclusively, but that the burden oftentimes falls on their shoulders. So keeping that in mind, that translates so that the amount of hours that somebody has to provide caring for their elderly parent means that those are hours that can't be spent working or earning a salary, or maybe even cuts into their retirement. Okay. Then we've got government programs. So Medicare and Medicaid, or in the state of California, it's called Medi-Cal. This is one of the myths or the points of confusion that people oftentimes have. So Medicare, which is the primary health program for seniors in the United States. So once you're age 65 and older, most people will qualify for Medicare. That is your health care, right? That is the doctor, the hospital, your prescription medicine. Medicare also does have an element of providing some long-term care assistance, but only up to 100 days of skilled nursing after hospitalization. And it is on a declining schedule in terms of how much Medicare will pay. So after 100 days in a skilled nursing home, Medicare taps out, and this becomes something that the individual is responsible for covering. Medicaid, we'll cover this a little bit more in a later slide. So this is Medicaid or Medi-Cal in California covers long-term care, but only after meeting income and asset limit requirements. So most frequently, this requires spending down your assets, there's various income or asset tests. And I will also say that essentially Medicaid or Medi-Cal is the resource of, I don't want to say last resort, but it is basically a state provided benefit. It's a welfare program. I don't like to use that term, but it's effectively that type of a program for folks that don't have the resources to provide self-funding or family support. Okay. So obviously, if somebody doesn't have the income or means and they need memory care, that may be a situation in which they may be looking to the state or federal programs to help to offset it. Also, in that area, there are for veterans, there are certain veterans benefits. I won't go into those in detail here, but the federal government does provide some aid and attendance benefits to veterans that qualify, or their spouses that veterans or veteran spouses that qualify. Okay, and then lastly on this list is our insurance solutions. So we've got traditional long-term care insurance. We have hybrid life or / long-term care policies, and then we have annuity-based long-term care riders. So I will go into each of those solutions here. Okay. Before I do that, actually, let me just talk about Medicaid, Medi-Cal a little bit more. So the so this is basically when somebody has a requirement for nursing home level care, they can't meet those two activities of daily living, or they have cognitive impairment. Now, there's on this slide, there's a combination of both Medicaid or Medi-Cal. So this depends upon where you live. I always encourage everybody to research the specific requirements based upon your state. So I'm going to kind of talk about both national as well as California. So income limits tend to be somewhere around $2,800 to $3,000 per month in order to qualify. Generally speaking, for Medicaid, you have to spend down your what are called countable assets to no more than $2,000. Okay, so technically there is not an asset limit in California, but they do look at a combination of factors to determine whether or not you qualify. Medicaid generally does have some degree of spousal protection in terms of the assets, so that's going to range somewhere between $30,000 and $150,000 depending upon the state. So that allows the spouse that doesn't require the long-term care to retain some assets, but it still has that requirement for spending down outside of. So if, say, for example, a couple had $500,000, they would be required to spend down their assets to the point where they fell within the acceptable category according to the state. Now, oftentimes people feel like, okay, well, I want to try to qualify for Medicaid or Medi-Cal, and I'm going to do that by giving away my assets. So I caution against that. There's nothing wrong with doing some strategic planning, but if you know that you're going to be applying for Medicaid or Medi-Cal, which is considered a welfare program, if you're deliberately trying to shelter or shield assets, they can come after you for financial fraud. So be very cautious about that. But generally speaking, what will happen is they will look at any assets that you gifted to anybody else in the last 60 months, last 5 years, and based upon that, they may disqualify you for a penalty period. So that would say the amount of money that you gifted may translate into a period of time that you have to wait before you're eligible for the Medicaid or Medi-Cal program. So that 60-month period is actually 30 months in California. So California is a little bit more generous, but there's still almost a 3-year look back or a 2.5-year look back on gifts or assets being transferred out of your estate. So I would always caution you against doing that and recommend that you talk to a qualified elder care or estate planning attorney if you want to look at the options you have for transferring assets or gifting to anybody. Okay. Lastly, regarding Medicaid or Medi-Cal, these programs do have a cost recovery element, meaning that after the individual, if you go on Medi-Cal and you're on it for a couple of years and then you end up passing away, the state will seek to recover the cost that they paid from your estate. Okay, so Now, if you need it, you need it. You just have to realize that they will go after getting paid back from your estate before the beneficiaries and the heirs that you have get those assets. So again, talk to an attorney if you are looking at trying to do some of that planning. So, all right. Bear with me just a second. There we go. All right, what are the countable assets? So you've got so the assets that count towards that spend down. That's going to be your cash, checking, savings balances, any non-qualified investment accounts. So those would be regular brokerage accounts, and then it would also include any real estate other than your primary residence. So rental houses or apartment buildings or those types of things that are used for income would be counted in the countable assets towards the spend down. Things that generally are not counted towards the spend down asset would be your primary residence within a specific range of value, depending upon the state. So they're not trying to force you out of your house, but if you're in a $15 million house on Malibu, they're probably going to require that you sell that in order to fund. If you're trying to say that you need Medicaid. You're allowed one car. You're allowed your personal belongings within a range. If you have assets, if you have very expensive jewelry, those they'll probably allow you to keep your specific heirlooms and your wedding rings and those types of things. But if you have other types of jewelry or collectibles, they'll require you to spend those. Burial funds, and they may or may not include your retirement accounts. Okay, so depending upon how large those retirement accounts are, and if you are in what is called payout status. So generally speaking, if you are taking required minimum distributions, that is considered being in payout status. Or if you have started distributions for retirement, they will look at that as being in payout status, and for that purposes may not look at your retirement accounts. But again, it just depends. Okay. All right. So let's talk about your long-term care insurance options, right? So we talked about traditional long-term care. So traditional long-term care insurance, it is probably the simplest element here. And it may or may not be the best option, but basically what we're talking about here is it pays a daily or monthly benefit for qualified long-term care expenses, okay? These can be flexible. They can be used for home, an assisted living facility. They can be used for adult daycare. The kind of the positive, the negative aspect of traditional long-term care is that you if you buy the policy, you're going to be expected to pay an annual premium ongoing until either you terminate the policy or you file a claim on it. So, and when do you file a claim? When you are determined to satisfy that 2 ADL requirement. So when a doctor, or sometimes it's 2 doctors, specify that you qualify, that you are no longer able to perform at least 2 activities of daily living, generally speaking, then you can file a claim on your long-term care policy and start to collect benefits once you've met the period of time. And we'll talk about that here in a second. So that's traditional long-term care. Next, we have hybrid life insurance plus long-term care policies. So in this case, it combines life insurance with a rider, an extra benefit that allows that life insurance to be converted into a long-term care benefit if needed. The benefit here is that usually if you don't need the long-term care benefit, if you don't need long-term care, then you can keep that life insurance policy until you pass away and your heirs or beneficiaries receive that death benefit. Premiums, when you purchase these, are typically guaranteed. They can either be paid in installments or they can be paid as a lump sum. So And we'll look at some examples here in a minute. Also, along with that would be an annuity-based long-term care rider. So this is, instead of using life insurance, this uses an annuity contract that provides an enhanced long-term care benefit. Oftentimes, if you have a specific payment or annuity amount, there's a multiplier effect for your long-term care. So this is suitable for clients that have assets that are in non-qualified annuities or have already, they have an annuity and they're looking for some additional options with that money that they may not be using. Maybe they might take that annuity and move it into another annuity product that has a long-term care rider. Okay, so those are a high level of our options. Okay, these are the the long-term care options. So these are the features of a typical policy. As I mentioned, a long-term care policy, whether it's a traditional one or one of these rider benefits, is going to have a specified daily or monthly benefit. So say, for example, maybe that's $300 per day that it caps you at, that can be used to apply to the services related to long-term care. You're going to specify a benefit period, whether that's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or a lifetime. Now, I'm going to say the long-term care market is in a little bit of a disarray right now. I don't believe that any insurance companies are writing any more lifetime-related long-term care policies. So generally speaking, I think the longest that I've seen lately is 6 years. So think about buying a long-term policy that's going to provide a benefit for maybe 1 to 6 years. The longer the time frame, the more expensive the premium is going to be. Same thing with the benefit amount. The more the daily benefit, the more expensive the policy is going to be. As I mentioned previously, there's usually an elimination period. That is the time that you have to wait between when you file a claim and when your benefits start. So that could be 30, 60, 90, 120 days. Usually it doesn't, you don't wait 120 days. Usually the most common is probably 90. So the shorter the elimination period, the more expensive the policy is going to be. Whether or not you have inflation protection, so that might be either a 3, 4, 5% inflation protection. It can either be simple inflation or compound inflation growth, and that is to hopefully offset some of the rising costs that we're seeing with respect to these services. So if I buy a long-term care policy now that I'm not going to use for another 20 years, well, almost indefinitely, costs are going to be more expensive in 20 years. And so this is where that inflation protection adds to the daily benefit amount, and it hopefully keeps it up to a certain extent with the inflation that we're seeing in those costs. And then, like I said, the benefit trigger, that's generally when a medical professional specifies that you can't provide 2 or more of those ADLs, or they say that you're cognitively impaired, okay, dementia or otherwise. Okay, so here's an example of a traditional standalone long-term care policy. As you can see, some of those benefit features. So $150 per day for 3 years, a 3-year period with a 90-day elimination period, and a 3% compound inflation protection. Now, don't take these estimates to the bank. These are just kind of rough approximations, but your estimated, if I buy this policy where I'm age 55, then I'm going to be probably paying as an individual somewhere around $200 to $2,200, maybe $2,400 per year, or maybe $200 per month as a premium for this policy. That means that I'm going to be paying that indefinitely until I end up needing it. Age 65, you can see the premium gets more expensive. Now it's $3,600 per year. And at age 75, when I'm getting pretty close to the potential for needing to use this policy, you can see it's almost tripled from the original price, premium price. So the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. The more lucrative the benefits, the more expensive it gets. So if I instead bump that daily benefit rate level from $150 per day to $300 per day for 3 years, then those premiums are probably going to double, if not triple, the costs. Okay. All right. So down at the bottom, you can see the factors influencing those premiums, right? Your age, the benefit amount, the benefit period, right? The elimination period, your inflation protection. We talked about that. Your health status, right? If somebody goes to apply for one of these products, they're going to put you through underwriting, and that's the insurance company determining what is the risk that exists for this particular individual. How likely are they to file a claim? And if, say, for example, you have early onset dementia, most likely you're not going to be able to get a policy because you're almost invariably going to go on claim immediately. So lastly on that, sorry ladies, I hate to tell you this, but women often pay more because on the positive side, you have longer life expectancy. So us guys, we got the short end of the stick on that. We check out early, and ladies, you stick around longer. But because of that, the costs for long-term care policies are going to be more expensive for you. So sorry about that. All right. Let's talk about the hybrid policy. All right. So this is a hybrid life insurance with a long-term care rider. So in this example, mind you, we're talking about a cash value, okay, or what would otherwise be called a permanent policy. We are, for the most part, not talking about term policies, but there are some out there that do provide long-term care riders on a term policy. Not very common though. So you got your base life insurance policy of $250,000 as a death benefit. And then you've got this long-term care rider that essentially acts as a multiplier. It doubles that base life insurance amount. So 2-year maximum benefit. So it gives you a 2-year maximum, and basically takes that basic life insurance amount to $250,000, from $250,000 to $500,000 if the long-term care is determined to be needed, right? And generally speaking, this is going to be a single premium paid up front. You might also be able to pay this in installments, but it's generally going to be a permanent or a cash value type of a policy. Okay, so you might be, this might cost you, if you're age 55, $50,000 is a lump sum. Again, the older you get, the more it's going to cost you, because you're more likely to either file a claim of long-term care, or if you're going to pass away, that you're closer to that potential date in which your heirs are filing a claim. So all the factors that I mentioned before influence the price. But now, additionally, you've got this long-term care rider that also influences the premium that you would end up being paid. Okay. Now, the benefit of this is that the death benefit can either be paid as a death benefit upon your death, okay, or should you need it, you have this underlying long-term care benefit to help to cover those costs, right? Because as long as you still got the policy in place upon your death, right, they're going to pay out the death benefit. Or if you need the resources before your death, they're going to be able to utilize these to help to cover some of those costs ahead of time. Okay. Generally speaking, you're not looking at any increase in premium payments after you've purchased this policy. All right, now next one is our annuity-based long-term care rider. So very similar to the life insurance, but this is an annuity, right? And so again, annuities are purchased to provide guaranteed income. If they're annuitized, they're purchased for tax deferral. But let's just use the example here. You have a single premium annuity, you put in $100,000, and this annuity has a 3 times multiplier on the annuity value, in this case up to $300,000 for that long-term care benefit. So still has the requirement to trigger the two ADLs to trigger the benefit, but now you've taken this $100,000 and converted it into a long-term care benefit that pays for the long-term care costs above and beyond what that annuity would have otherwise provided. So if you think about, I put that $100,000 in. Normally, if I annuitize it or I turn it into that fixed income, maybe that's going to give me $1,000 per month if I annuitize it. Rather than if instead I hold on to that and now I need that long-term care. Well, now maybe that benefit pays $2,000 or maybe $3,000 per month towards those long-term care needs that I have. Okay. All of the other factors that we talked about still influence the overall cost of the annuity with the rider, right? And this is where you can kind of play with the levers here. With the annuity, there's a tax advantage, right? Because when you purchase an annuity, you get tax advantage growth on the money that you put into it, and then specifically when you take it out for long-term care needs, it is considered a health care need, so you get the double benefit of having it most likely as tax-free. That depends upon the annuity and the structure, but I'm just going to say there's some tax advantages there. Generally speaking, the life insurance option and the annuity option are used when you're looking at the cost, the premium. If I buy a standalone long-term care policy, I know I've got to be paying this premium, and if I never need long-term care, well then, that money, may have been lost forever. Versus with a life insurance policy or an annuity, you put money into these policies, and you still may never use the money, but at least now you have the ability to have that money passed to a beneficiary rather than going to the insurance company. And then if you do need long-term care, you've got that multiplier effect that kind of leverages that money up for you if you do need long-term care. Okay, so those are the 3 different categories of long-term care insurance, generally speaking, that is out there, in addition to the government benefits and self-funding that we talked about. All right, so we're about 45 minutes into this. I'm getting close, so let's just talk about a few things that are important when we're dealing with long-term care and estate planning. Again, I'm going to hit again on what I talked about last month. Key documents to have in place: your durable power of attorney, right, for finances, a healthcare power of attorney. So durable power of attorney for finances is for folks to assign somebody to make financial decisions on their behalf if they are incapacitated or unable to make those decisions for themselves. For example, if they have cognitive impairment. Healthcare power of attorney authorizes somebody to make healthcare decisions on their behalf if they're incapacitated. Living will or advanced directive provides preferences for medical treatments and end-of-life care, allowing the doctor to provide the proper amount of type and amount of care for you. And then obviously your last will and testament or revocable trust. So this again directs how you want your assets to be distributed upon your death. Let me go back and mention about the life insurance and the annuity. Generally speaking, life insurance policies have a specified beneficiary, as do oftentimes annuities. Those will generally go to your beneficiaries or heirs named in those policies outside of probate, outside of the trust, unless you specifically name the trust or the estate as the beneficiary of those policies. Okay. Um, Consider reviewing these documents every couple of years just to make sure nothing significant has changed, and they're still up to date and applicable. Okay, end of life planning. So oftentimes when we're talking about long-term care, we're really starting to talk about end of life planning, which has its own difficulties. It's emotional, it's challenging. Nobody really wants to contemplate their own mortality, right? But having these discussions about what you want with those that are going to be charged with providing the care and making those decisions or executing on your wishes is important, because otherwise they're left guessing. Okay. So we're going to talk about the advanced directives, DNR or DNI. So this is if you do not want to be resuscitated, you don't want to be put on a ventilator, that's where your DNR or DNI orders come into place. Palliative care instructions. So what types of care do you want if you are determined to be at end of life? If you're put onto hospice, right? So do you want drugs? Do you want painkillers? Do you not want them? What other types of treatments do you want them to provide to you to ease your pain? So palliative care, generally speaking, is all about pain management. And then hospice is how you are treated, or what your end of life circumstances generally are going to be like. Now, Medicare does provide hospice. So when a doctor has determined that your life expectancy is no more than 6 months because of a condition, maybe it's cancer, maybe it's some other type of condition that is providing them an expectation that you're going to succumb within the next 3 to 6 months, then you can go ahead and apply for hospice. And at that point, generally, all of those end-of-life hospice care ends up being paid for by Medicare. So hospice is something that's covered by Medicare, but before you are put on hospice, these costs generally fall onto your shoulders until that point. So things that you should also be considering, right? Funeral, burial, and cremation preferences, whether you want your organs or tissues donated, letters, writing last messages for loved ones or otherwise. So it's not unusual for people to leave these things to the last minute and not get it completely done. So having the conversation is important. Okay. Now, how do we go about doing that? So it requires taking the steps. So looking at your assets and your income, right? Estimating your care costs, talking to facilities and getting an estimate of what their care is, how they coordinate benefits, how they might work with private policies or state policies or those types of things. Looking at the best spend down strategy to make sure that you're doing so tax efficiently, right? Because if you're spending a lot of money in long-term care and other types of medical care costs, those may be creating a significant tax deduction for you. So maybe you do want to use some of your taxable investments, such as 401ks or IRAs, and instead consider leaving the other assets that might get a step up in basis upon your death. So looking at tax efficient funding plan is important, helpful. Okay. And then making sure that your estate planning attorney is aligned with what your wishes are. So lots of different professional support in this process. Obviously your financial advisors and planners, your state attorneys, your insurance folks, and your healthcare providers. Okay, so all this is intended to provide that comprehensive plan that hopefully This is not an easy process no matter what, but hopefully it provides some degree of an easier path for both you and your loved ones that have to help you navigate through this process. All right, so coming to the end here, here are some resources that you can use or research to help you in this process. So longtermcare.gov. This is the government provided resource to help with these decisions. Obviously, Medicare is one that will, you go to Medicare and they can provide you there's a specific book that shows you the benefits that you have available and what benefits are available, what are not. Medicaid.gov, or in California, Medi-Cal. So these are state specific that provide you a detail of what is available through to cover some of these costs. So other nonprofit or educational resources, the National Institute on Aging, AARP's caregiving resources, and the Conversation Project, all are resources that you can utilize to start to develop your plan. Obviously, we're here for that process as well. So you can certainly look to us to leverage that and assist you in this space. Okay. Okay. So with that, all right, that's the end of my material. Let me open it up for any questions that anybody might have. Feel free to unmute yourself and or use the little hand raise icon if you have a question you'd like me to address. So I'm going to scroll through here to make sure that I have got anybody. So, all right. Any questions? Okay. Looks like we got one. Pat. Let's, you should be able to unmute yourself. Let's see. Hopefully, let's see if I can unmute you for yourself. Nope. Were you able to unmute yourself?
I think so.
There you are. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
For long-term care insurance companies, are there rating agencies that rate the financial viability of some of these agencies or these insurance companies that we can choose from?
There are, yeah. So each insurance company does have a financial rating. That actually has been. I'm glad you asked that. Has been one of the key concerns and issues with the rise of claims. So one of the reasons why long-term care insurance industry, particularly as it relates to standard long-term care, has been in a little bit of a disarray is because historically, when people have purchased these policies, they generally don't let them go. And so what that means is that a lot of the insurance companies underestimated the number of claims and the amount of claims that people were going to have on these policies. So I would look at, if you're looking at standard traditional long-term care insurance, definitely look at the ratings, right? And then you can go to the state insurance. You should be able to go to the state and get the ratings on the company in terms of its financial viability to make sure that if you're buying a policy from a particular company, that they're going to have the resources to backstop the claims that they may have. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. As my father-in-law had CalPERS long-term care, and he bought a policy for 10 years back in the day, and they raised his premium super high because they didn't plan actuarially for all the claims.
Yeah, that was unfortunately a situation in which you had a pension benefit company, or I call them a company, it's obviously the state, but a pension benefit organization trying to offer a benefit in a space that they had no real former knowledge or experience in. So they got bit with the what I just described is they underestimated how many people were going to maintain their policies and would file claims. and obviously the promised benefits ended up outstripping the resources. They underpriced. They ultimately underpriced those policies, and so even still though, those policies, those CalPERS policies, are probably still cheaper, or are probably still cheaper than trying to go out and get a standalone policy on your own. I mean, the fact that there's still lifetime benefits, folks that have lifetime benefit policies with CalPERS, you're just never going to find that again.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, absolutely. All right, any other questions that we might have on this topic? I know it's super interesting, but it is a very important topic. Like I said, I'm unfortunately my family and I are dealing with this ourselves in a couple of different areas. So let's see, anybody else that has their hand raised? I don't see anybody. So, all right. Well, with that, did I stop sharing my screen? Well, hold on. Let me go back to the content. Oh. Let's see. Well. Okay. Well, anyway, I don't know if you guys can still see my screen or not. Hopefully not. You're not looking at my email. Hopefully you're still seeing the screen. I'll just close it off with, first of all, thank you everybody for joining me today. There's a couple of other sessions coming up. I just want to remind everybody about. So the next one is going to be the monthly market update that I do every month. That is right now scheduled for the 5th of Wednesday, 5th of November, Wednesday the 5th of November. This is where I kind of go over the previous month's report and various financial related issues that we're seeing from the market, if the reports are out in time. So if they are out in time, I'll do it on the 5th. Otherwise, I will push it to the following week. And then next month's session is going to be on charitable planning. So that's Wednesday, November 19th at 12 p.m. Pacific. So the monthly market update is on Wednesday, November 5th at 11 a.m. And the charitable planning session that I'm doing similar to this is on Wednesday, November 19th at 12 p.m. You can look for the invites for that to come out. If you want to go back and watch this again, once this session is concluded, you should receive an email notification that the video has been published, and you can go back and watch it again. I also will say that if you want to watch any of the previous videos, previous webinars that I've done on any of the various topics, those are also posted on the website, and you are able to go back and watch those as well. Okay, so with that, I'm going to say thank you, and I will end the meeting for the day. So thank you, everybody, for joining me, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right. Take care.